Alrighty. So for this studio, the exercise was to make a user model so that we can start thinking about how to log users into and out of our application, which is something that we're going to care a lot more about, especially when we get to persistence, which is coming up very shortly in the prep work. And so they are walking us through this step by step, and so we'll follow the instructions, but we'll also have a little bit of a chat, make sure we understand exactly what's going on as we go through this, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a separate controller. So we already have one controller for the cheeses. We're going to make another controller for the users because that's kind of a separate piece of our app, right? The cheese functionality works pretty well. We're going to leave that alone. For logging in and logging out, that's sort of a different piece of functionality. It's a different feature. So we're going to make a separate controller for that. So we'll go ahead and create a new controller class called user controller. All right, there it is. Easy enough. And then we need to add some things such as the controller annotation and this request mapping annotation that they suggest. Probably even just copy paste those in. Controller, have to import it. And the request mapping for user. So that'll set up the routes for us. Again, I have to import it. Okay. So far, so good. We're only going to do, I think, one major piece of functionality for this studio, which is going to be adding new users and logging them in. So the next thing that they're going to do, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create some templates for creating a sign-up form that we're going to eventually complete in a moment. So we're going to create a new folder for those templates called user in our templates folder. Create a new directory called user. And there's no templates in here. Now you could create brand new templates from scratch, or if you wanted to, you could also copy some existing templates since you know that we're gonna be adding users and we're gonna need a form, right? I could copy an existing form and just kind of tweak it a little bit. Depends on what you wanna do. No. So there's add. I'm just going to copy the existing ones and we can modify them to do whatever it is that we need them to do. And that way we have some code that we can start with and it's going to feel pretty similar to the forms that we've already got, right? With some changes that we're going to need to make. Okay. So then the next thing that it says to do is to create a user class within our models package. So I'm going to come down here to my models, make a new user class, and now we're ready to start doing some of the actual work. We just did a whole bunch of setup. So to recap what we did, we created a user controller. We created some templates that we're going to need to modify a little bit later for adding a new user and logging in. And we created an empty model. So now we need to go back and we need to fill all these things in because none of them have any code yet. None of them really have any functionality yet. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to design and implement our model. And then we're going to go back and we're going to add templates and a handler for registering a new user to our application. So in terms of what our model contains, you can see the fields that they list here, right? Username, email, and password. Tells us they should each be strings. So these are all going to become fields. String, username, private, string, email, private, string, password. All right. And the other thing that we need to consider with our model is the constructor. So do we need to create a constructor for this model? What do we think? Do we know if we need to create? So here's another way of thinking about this, right? Maybe I don't know if I need to create a constructor for this model. If I don't create a constructor, what constructor do I have? Default constructor. So maybe that's good enough. Or maybe I do need a constructor. Right now, maybe it's too early for me to tell one way or the other if I need a constructor, or if just the regular default constructor is going to be enough. So I can leave it alone for now, not worry about the constructor, and if I decide a little bit later on that I would like to have a constructor, I can always come back and add one in, right? What we definitely will need are getters and setters for these fields, and so hopefully we're familiar enough with how those work now that we can just let IntelliJ do a lot of that for us by generating getters and setters for these three fields. And there we go. So this is our model. In fact, what we've created here is what's called a data class, or maybe like you might hear it referred to as a bean in some contexts, but I prefer data class. It's a little bit more of a generic name. Basically, it's all it does is it stores some information. It doesn't have any methods that do any complex behavior. The only methods that I have are getters and setters, right? So really all I can do is add data or get data out of this object. That's it. So it's called a data class. It's used purely for passing information around my application, not to perform any kind of complex work. And so now that we have our basic model set up, we can start to focus on setting up the templates and the handler. So the view and the controller piece, now that the model piece is finished. And so the next thing that the studio asks us to work on is rendering the form. So we'll go ahead and create this method in our controller class. Not cheese controller, we have a separate controller called user controller, okay? Public, what's the return type? String, yeah, it's always gonna be a string. We need to import the model. And we need to do a request mapping, right? We need to do a request mapping to set up the route. What's the route gonna be? It probably tells us in the prep work. Should do user/add. Okay? Add. I think that's all we really need, right? And so then what does this actually need to do? What does this handler actually need to do? It says, for now, it can just return the path to the add template. So it's gonna be a very simple handler. All it's gonna do is render the form. That's all we needed to do right now. Pretty straightforward stuff. So I just need to return the path to the form, which is gonna be user/add. Okay? Nothing complicated yet. What's going to get a little bit more complicated is what we're going to do next, which is creating the form. We're going to want to use the binding, right? We're going to want to bind the user object to the form. So what does that mean when I'm creating the form? What does that actually mean for us if I want to try to use binding? What does that mean in terms of the HTML of my form? How do I bind an object to a form? What does that look like? What do I have to do? There were some rules I had to follow, right? In the HTML, yeah. I'm sorry? TH object? I think you might be a little bit ahead of us. Yes, I want these to match the fields from my user object, right? So this is set up for a cheese right now. That's not what we're dealing with anymore. We're dealing with the user object. So I'm gonna need, how many text boxes? I think we're gonna need 4. Username, email, password, and then a verify. So I'm gonna need 4 boxes, right? And I need to very carefully make sure that the names of these match. So if I look at my user object, I've got username, email, password. Those are 3 of the 4 right there. So I can go ahead and set those up. Username, this will be email, and then I'll have to make another one. And I have to change the labels too, I know, I'll have to do that. Password, this will be pass field, and then I need to change these labels so that they match. Username, email, password, and then I need one more box for the verify. So I'm gonna paste that one more time. But this does not match with our user object, right? I don't have a verify field as part of my user object, correct? So we're gonna need to think about that, especially when we process this form, when we handle the form, right? The handler for this form. We're gonna have to think about that for a second and what it actually means. But for the time being, I'll go ahead and include this verify box in here. Verify. And let me see if there's anything else that I need to change in here right now. Looks okay. Oh, it does say. Yeah, it does say. Well, name field isn't bad. Description field, this one should be pass field, and this one should be verify. Thank you. And then this shouldn't be add cheese, but add user, since we're adding users now, not cheeses. But otherwise, I think we're okay. I might have missed something in here somewhere, but I think we're okay. In fact, at this point in time, we could actually fire this up and test it and see if it displays the form properly. The form's not hooked up to anything yet, so it's not going to actually make a user, but we can at least see if our form looks okay real quick. And while that's starting, we can see where we're at in the instructions and what we need to do next. Verify password input should be set up to post to the same URL that it is displayed at. Did we do that part? Where is this going to send us? So I see method post. I don't see an action. So what does that mean if there's no action? Default to the same page, so we're good there, right? That's okay. All right, so it says it's running, so let's see if we can take a look. Then we want to go to user/add, I believe. All right, well, did I type the right address? Did I do something wrong? I must have done something wrong. Did I not save some stuff? I don't know. Maybe I forgot. Where's my controller? Saved. User, add. I didn't put a method here, right? That could be the problem? I'm not sure. I think it does too, yeah. Well, we can see what it says, maybe. Wait, oh, failed to start. That's weird. Didn't run properly. Let's just try it again. For some reason, it didn't run properly last time. And it did it again, that's great. I must already have it running. Process is running in the background, yeah. Probably. Yeah, I see what you're getting at. I think I just stopped it. I think that's what the problem was, though. I had an extra one running in the background. Let's try it one more time and see. It was probably from class earlier, like the one that I was using in class. I just never stopped it, and so when I tried to restart it, it got mad at me because it was already running. Yeah, I think that's what happened. All right, there we go, that's better. Oh, I have this up here, which actually relates to cheeses, not users, so I could take this off, right? I don't need this necessarily. I guess it's not hurting anything, but it's pretty easy to just take that off. That's just this line right here. So we can take that off. But the form looks good, right? Username, email, password, verify, add user, it looks fine. So now we just need to hook it up. We need to do the other side. We need to process the form once it gets submitted. And remember, we want these first three to be bound to the object, the user object, but this verify one doesn't have anything to be bound to. There's no field for that. So that's going to be treated a little bit differently. I think the instructions actually touch on this a little bit. So if I look at the next step, it has us create a handler method. And if we look at this method, right? Model attribute. So that's the binding, right? That's what's going to bind it to the user object. And then you notice that I have this additional verify afterwards because that's not going to get bound to my user object. Okay, so I can grab this and put it in my controller, my user controller here. All right, and I need to import the model attributes. And I need to import the user as well. That's the right one, okay? And so now, if I make it here, I should have a fully formed user object. What I need to do then, what the instructions are telling me to do, is check that the verify value matches the password. So we need to make sure that they typed the proper password in twice, right? If it does match, then we just send them to the index and we say hello, right? If it doesn't match, then we need to send them back to the form and tell them to redo, right? So this is the tricky bit of this studio, I think. First things first, I need to check to see if this matches whatever password is inside of my user object, correct? So how am I going to do that? If what? How do I get the password out of my user object? Use the getter, yeah. User.get password equals verify. Somebody stop me, please. Dot equals, thank you. Dot equals. Dot equals. So this is the case where they do match, right? That means everything worked. So all I really need to do then is send them to the index page and say hello to the username. So we actually haven't made our index template yet. In fact, it's still set up to be our cheese template. And so we can basically gut this and redo it, right? How do I put something in here that's just going to say hello to the username? What HTML do I need? You could use a header, so like h2, and then I just need to do some th text, right? Equals hello plus, and then what? Put the name in, $, bracket, and then user.username. Will that work? Yeah, so by typing this, now I'm obligated to tell it what user is, right? So let's do that. Let's go back to our handler real quick in the, where's my controller? Is it this one? So I need to pass in who I want that user to be. So model.add attributes, user, and then just going to be my user object. Remember, this is the name that I'm going to see in TimeLeaf, and this is the Java object that I'm passing into the model. They happen to look the same right now, but I'm taking this user object that was generated, I'm passing it in. It should just say hello. We can actually test this. And then we just have to do the other side where if they don't do it properly, right, then we have to, oh wait, I need to do one more thing, sorry. Return user/index. I forgot that step. All right, now we can test it. And then we're running a little short on time, but we'll see how far we can get with the verification process before we run out of time. Oh shoot, what did I do wrong? I have an error in my controller. Am I forgetting a thing? Oh, I am forgetting a thing. I have to return something here, right? This is inside of an if statement, so I have to return something. So if I fail, what do I want to happen? I want to send them back to the form, correct? So let's just return, user/add for now. Now we can try this again real quick. We have some more work that we need to do here, I think, right? But I just want to test the functionality real quick here. So if I go back, hit refresh. All right, cool. Doug. There's my email address. Hi. Oh gosh. Oh no. You can see my password. Whoops. I screwed up. Uh-oh. Something didn't work right. I'm sorry? request mapping annotation? Here? Like that? Oh, I know what you're saying. I forgot to put the route in. You're right. Sorry about that. My fault. So this should be add, and then we just need to put in a method, right? Post. Is that the right syntax? That is not the right syntax. I'm sorry? I'm just going to look up the other one here and copy it. Method equals request method.post. Thank you. That's what you were trying to tell me, and my brain was just having trouble. Sorry, that's my fault. All right, try this one more time. So unfortunately, we are running really short on time, and I do not think that we're going to have enough time to fully get this coded up, but we can at least chat about it with the remaining few minutes that we have, right? While this is loading up. If it goes wrong, if the username and the password don't match, it wants to send me back to the form, but it wants to fill in those boxes with the values from the user object. The username and the email box, not the password, but the username and the email box. How do I do that? What would I need to do to pull that off? Think about what we did in the exercise earlier today with the editing of the cheeses. How would I modify what I've already got to populate those boxes with the username and the email address if they type it in wrong, if they give me a bad password? Yes. Yep. So I would have to pass in the user object, even though I know that the user object is bad, right? They didn't type in the password properly. I'd still pass that user object back to my template, and then inside of my template, I would have to include the, the user name and the email on the first two text boxes in very much the same way that we did it in the exercise that we did in class earlier today. Now here's one follow-up question. I'll leave you with this since we're just not going to have enough time to get to it. Okay, what happened here? Let's just see if this works one time, and then I'll try and get out of your way. Huh, it didn't send me to the right page. Well, it didn't break. It sent me to the wrong index. Yeah, it sent me to the wrong index. User/index. Did I put the method in the wrong place? The message? Oh, I put it in the cheese index instead of the... I did. Whoops. My bad. I ruined it. All right. Sorry. Okay, well, yeah. I think that's as good as we're going to get today. But anyway, one last thing for you to think about, right? If I'm sending the user object back to the form so that I can fill in those boxes, what about the first time when I get to the form? If I go to the form the first time, those boxes should be empty, but the template is still going to have the code in there to pull values out of a user object and fill them in the text boxes. So how do I resolve that? Yeah. Whether I redirect or not, it's still going to render that template, and that template's going to be looking for a user object. So my question is, if I go to sign up the first time, those boxes should be empty, right? Do I have a user object at that point? So I could do some time leaf work to check and see if a user object is present. There's another solution actually as well. which is, if I'm going there the first time, just give it an empty user object, a blank user object, right? Use it as a placeholder, so that way at least TimeLeaf is happy, and then it can still render the form and let the user fill out the information. I'm sorry I ran out of time for this one. I might, if we have time, on Thursday, code up the solution to this and show it off real quick at the beginning of class. But I don't want to hold you guys here any later than I already have, so thank you very much, and have a great week, and I'll see you on Thursday.